Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Tuesday. It's May 24th. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And real quickly, I just wanted to follow up from yesterday, just kind of fill you in without going into a lot of details. But I told you I had a doctor's appointment this morning, but I had a small spot on my chest that was suspicious, and we removed it, sent it off for biopsy. The dermatologist told me that what it is, and it's a very common. It is skin cancer, but it's not the bad kind. It's the kind you can remove, and they they've scraped it and feel like they got everything. Real small, maybe less than the size of a dime, really, about the size of the end of your fingertip. So, but it had been bothering me, and it wouldn't go away, and it was a concern for me. So I went in, had it taken off. They sent it off for a biopsy, but unless something comes back from that biopsy, I don't have to go back except for a follow-up 6 weeks from now, and got a good checkup. They checked my whole body over for any other spots, and no other signs of anything that looks suspicious. So anyway, I just thought I'd fill you in because I know some of you are probably curious why I was going to the doctor. But that was it, and I think I'm taken care of. The worst part of it was the shot they gave me to deaden it. I didn't feel anything after that, but the shot was pretty painful. But after that, she cut the thing off and didn't take any stitches or anything. And I guess they scrape it out underneath afterwards. And she said it was. She said usually if you've got any issues, it'll be spongy under there. And I mean, this may just be words to most of you. It kind of was to me, but it makes sense. She said it wasn't spongy, that there was hard tissue under there, and that it would heal up, and I probably wouldn't even have a scar. So that's really good because I figured they'd have to stitch me up or something. But no, and it was not very painful. It was very quick. I was out of there within 45 minutes, and before I got out of there, she was zapping some things on my shoulder and on my forehead, and so I got the once over for my skin today, and other than that, I'm in good health. So anyway, appreciate the emails and the well wishes and all that, and but I'm back, and we're back on schedule. So nothing serious, and I just wanted to kind of fill you in so people weren't thinking I'm about to kill over here or anything. But anyway, let's get to the chart. As you can see, the first semi-positive sign, we got a higher low here and some definite rejection today after trading way real low. We closed very high here, almost on the high of the day. So if we could get some follow through here, it might be a pretty positive setup going on here. It's a triple test. It's a higher low. A break above this bar would be a second entry. We're still, I mean, we're not severely oversold here, but we're definitely in oversold territory still. It wouldn't take but one good bounce here to get us back to the midline though, and then who knows where we go from there. But so far, this is looking positive. This is the first day I've been able to say, hey, this looks a little positive for a while. So. We'll have to see what the tomorrow brings and the rest of the week brings, but for now, this is still setting up positively. If we get some follow through, we'll have to see if we break above this. It's not quite 5 yet, so we haven't opened back up. We'll see where we open. We could drop and open way down here again today, but for now, this is a semi-positive looking chart. It looks like we may bounce out of here. We got to get the follow through. We need more price to print to the chart, more price action to print to the chart. But just what I'm seeing here, if we get a break higher and some follow through, it's looking semi-positive for at least a good bounce here, a nice correction. So anyway, let's flip over to the intraday 2000 tick chart. We'll go through the trades and we'll wrap today up. Okay, one other real quick housekeeping issue. Memorial Day is coming up, so I think we're going to have an extended weekend. I didn't look at it that closely, but just glancing at it, it looks like the market's going to close at noon on Monday and not open up again till 5 on Tuesday. So that means we really get a 2-day holiday. If I'm reading that correctly, we'll revisit that before the end of the week. But just in case I forgot, and because sometimes that sneaks up on me, and the next thing you know, it's Friday and I'm gone and I forgot to make people aware. But you should always be following the the calendar, the trading calendar anyway, for holidays and so forth. But I believe, based on what I saw, that the market will close at noon on Monday, but you don't want to trade those days. There's usually no volume and nothing going on and just a waste of time. And um, so that means we'll get a 2-day holiday. That means really we'll get a 4-day weekend, if I read that correctly, at least a 3-day weekend, but maybe a 4, because it looks like the market doesn't open back up till 5 p.m. on Tuesday. So that means we get Monday and Tuesday a break, and then we'll get a regular day on Wednesday. So it'll be a real short week next week if that's the case. But we'll revisit that. I'll look at it again. But anyway, here's our 2000 tick chart. I posted this morning. The yellow was a possibility. It looks like it's correct, but it doesn't really follow through. So it looks like we got the break of the blue and a move to a new low, and we went sideways a little bit before reversing out of there. So I don't think this really helps you any here. So I'm going to remove it. This looks accurate here. The break and the huge move. I mean, that's a really big move to a new low, but the channel really comes back into play and continues to play, and you get another break and a new low. And you see that sometimes. I didn't mark these trades in here, but you might have considered some of them, because you do see that sometimes. You get the break and a move to a new low, and the market comes back to the trend line, and it just keeps holding until you get another break and a new low. It's rare, but it happens sometimes. And if you look, we pretty much got, there was leg 1 down, and then there was leg 2. So we really almost had 2 measured legs down there. We didn't quite make that measured move, and then we bounced, and we really rallied on out of there. I mean, in the big picture, this day closed very near its high. I mean, there's a gap here that we still haven't filled that gap. However, we did fill the gap from yesterday here. So we'll see what tomorrow brings, but we just talked about the daily chart, and it looks fairly positive on the daily chart. So we'll see what tomorrow brings. But let's back out, go through the trades, and kind of wrap this day up. Okay, 7 o'clock comes just as we're bottoming out here, and the problem was the trend is, well, you could almost argue this is sideways here, and you really wouldn't have had the blue channel. You might have had it. Really what I did was draw it off the lows and drug it up, so it looked like we had a break and didn't quite make a new low, and you would think, hey, we're probably going to try to retest this, but it looks, this almost looks like a range day too early on. But really what you're looking at here is, this is a new high, so you just start from 0 here. What a lot of people do is go first entry, second entry, and then they wonder, why'd that fail right there? Well, that's not a leg. That's all one leg with a correction and then a second leg. So really your second entry comes down here, and then you get a higher low right here, but you didn't quite make a new low on this cayenne colored channel. So these are both very tempting. You might take either one of them. I don't think I would take this one, because the channel is still something to be worried about, but when it bounced here and you really get a triple test across there as well, you may take that trade. I didn't mark it earlier. I wasn't actually here. That was just during my doctor's appointment, so I was not watching this in real time, but just looking at this after the fact, I still like it. So anyway, we take off, we make a new high, you get a first entry and a second entry. Your signal bar is not any good for the second entry here, but again, notice this, this is basically a new low here, and you get a first entry, second entry, so you could treat that like a failure. It also is a triple test. So, but generally you don't want to enter on an inside bar, but since this is a failure, I think you're okay, especially with it being a second entry and a triple test, and knowing that prices are probably headed to try to make a new high on this green channel, and maybe we're going to reverse, and maybe this is a range day and we're headed way up here. So there's still a couple of different ways to be looking at this point. But really the entry is 1 tick above this small bar here, and your safety stop has to go below the signal bar, because that makes the lowest point. So your safety stop, so this is our signal bar, but you enter 1 tick above this little small green bar, because that's where the failure occurred. And if for some reason you didn't like that, you get another one here. I marked this one green because that looks a little congested by the end, and there's not much room back to those highs. So I think this one's, I think you have to enter this one on the engulfing bar. And if you did that, you might even argue it's red. But engulfing bars can be tricky, so you got to be careful with them. But of course, we break out the top and fail. Generally, you want to get a lower high here, so I marked that one green. But that's still pretty tempting. It really, you could argue, hey, there's a triple test across there. It's a little bit of space there with the first two being, but that's still a triple test. So you could almost argue for that to be red, but I'm going to keep it green because I think you should wait on a lower high there. You're going to have more success if you do in most cases. You do get a lower high, but it's moved a little bit far for that. But this is like a little breakout pull back short. And of course you would have drawn your trend line off those first two swings. And you also would expect that prices are probably going to at least make a measured move down here. I don't have that on there either. But you can see we found support there, went a little lower and came back before we confirmed this trend line and keep going lower. So I like that trade. It's a little aggressive because it's just a breakout pullback and it's the first test. But the market, we'd made this one leg down, so there's still a good chance we're going to make another leg on this leg right here. You can just measure it from here. So that's giving us a target way down here. And if you measure it from way up here, then your target's even much further down. As you can see way down here. So there's some reasons to think that prices are going lower here. So anyway, I left it green. I think it's a little aggressive, but we drop on down. We find a little support. It continues to drop. I don't see any entries down there. And then, of course, we bounce here, and this is basically a double bottom. So you get a first entry, second entry, right at the key entry point. You actually got a break in new high in here, and that green arrow really confirms the trend line. So you might enter there because you do have a break in new high with a confirmation of that trend line. But when you get this lower high right here, when it tried to go higher again, very bearish bar, I like going short there. Then we bounce back. You could almost call that a second entry, but I'd probably wait on a lower high, which comes here. And this didn't break higher, so you could still consider that another attempt. And you might even look at this as a triple test across here. If you did, if you saw the triple test, you really could argue for either one of these. So I'll mark them green. And then there's a reversal here, actually right here, and it is off the key entry point, but it didn't quite get back to the EMA, and we like to see those off the EMA. And this really looks just like a first entry. So really, if you were going to count it a failure, I would count it right here. First entry, second entry, and I didn't mark that one, but you could argue for it too. So that would be your failure. There's just not a lot of room right there, and so I'm not crazy about it. We continue dropping on down, and again, like I said, we came back to the trend line here, but I'm still not crazy about that entry. We've already had a break and a new low, and this is a lot of sideways. I think you're better off to wait. Of course, it drops on down, and we're still doing the same thing, and I don't see any possible entries in there. By the time you get a triple test, you're going short right into the lows, and you see how it bounced there and there. It could have done the same thing here, so you just can't risk those. Finally, we bounce and come back, and you get a second entry. Notice you're moving up. First entry, that's the first break of that channel. Then you move up. Look how bearish that is, second entry. I like going short there. And then you get a lower high. If you don't like that one, it's a shame we didn't get any follow through on that one, and we just start kind of going sideways. There's actually another second entry right here and a very nice signal bar, but we made a new high here, so it's not like there's a double top or anything. So, and we could be making a measured move here. And so I just think it's a little risky. I mean, you were close to a measured move, but it doesn't quite get it. So I'm a little hesitant to go short there. There's a lower high here, but that looks a little sideways. Technically, that's not congestion. It's just prices trying to it's like a triple test almost with a very nice signal bar. But you can see we've been bouncing there at that midline. So there's a chance you could bounce and go higher, which you do, although that probably would have been enough to work. But finally it comes back, and if you're just patient, now you can argue this is a triple test and a bearish bar with plenty of room to get out before the midline and the next swing, and that's the better trade. I still marked it green. There's a lot of sideways stuff by that point. You get a lower high here too, and that one's tempting, but I'd skip it. Again, there's plenty of room there, but it closes right at the midline. So, I mean, it's one you could argue for, but I just think it's a little aggressive. I think you're asking for trouble there. Of course, it comes back and it gives you another setup here, but the signal bar is not good enough. Another lower high, not a good enough signal bar. We drop on down. So now we got the close outside and the new low. So now this thing could be over and we could go higher, and that's exactly what happens. We work higher here. It's not super strong higher, but all the same, we work higher from there. So that's perfect price action, really. Other than this fact that we had this break here, and then we got back in, but you see we got the break and new low, and then we're reversing. There's no reversal here that I like to set up. There's maybe one trade here on a little triple test. You do have enough room to get out. Very bearish bar. It actually breaks higher and turns down. Maybe you take that trade. It fails out the top, and again, that's a tempting one, but I think you need to wait on a lower high, and you don't get it. It's just the bottom falls out. And then we fell out the bottom and come back, and we're back inside there again. So really, you got another range going on here. The seller just don't want to give up. But here we got a higher low on a failed second entry short. Of course, you're not looking for a failure here, but when you're expecting a possible reversal and with room to scalp out here, and by that time you really probably should have moved this up to here. So that gives you plenty of room, and you get an easy scalp out of it, not much more. It comes back again, but that signal bar is not good enough, even though you had enough room. And it kind of rallies on out of there, but there's no setup really to catch that move. Runs up, you get a close outside on this Cayenne, move to a new high, move back to a new low, and we're right back to this trend line again. So no setup. You don't want to. I don't see anything reason to go short here. This is just a first entry, and when it bounces off that trend line there, there's actually a hidden second entry right there. That's one you might consider. Again, I think you're better off to wait on the higher low, and you actually get a failed second entry short right there. So when it breaks higher, you could see that's what the smart traders are waiting on. There's a higher low right here, but there's no setup. But when you get the failure, the smart traders are all over that, and it heads higher. We run up here. We actually get an overshoot, strong move down. There's a failure right here, but it looks a little too congested. And there's even a lower high here, but it concerns me because we do have an overshoot, and we do have what looks like a close outside here. But you could get trapped here and it take off longer. So I didn't like this trade until we tried to go higher one more time and got this big bearish bar. I don't know if I would wait and go short at the very low of that bar, but when it came by on an engulfing bar after trading way up here, and really you could almost argue it's the first test, second test. I mean, you could argue it's a failed second entry long for that matter. There's several ways to look at that, and of course this turns out to be a really nice trade, and you get a nice move down. And then you get a break of this Cayenne channel here and a move up. I don't see, this is tempting here, but I don't think the signal bar is good enough, and it's a shame because that's a really nice move. And then, so now you got your break of the Cayenne channel, move to a new low, and we're just kind of moving sideways here. But notice you do get a triple test here, but it's below the EMA. It is a second entry. There's some reasons to like that trade, But with all this congestion here, I would wait. I'd just wait. I think it's smarter. There's a higher low here. Again, all the congestion. But when it comes back and makes a failure here and this breaks lower and turns up, I like that entry on a failed second entry short. You can argue there's a triple test. 1, 2, 3. Then you get a higher low. If you didn't like that one, you get a higher low and it actually breaks lower and turns up. There's another chance to get in. Look at it go. And there's actually a little short-term channel here. I don't have it on there, but just to show you, you can see that channel. You actually get an overshoot. You still got to move to a new high. Then it tries to go lower, and notice you got the new high there, first entry and then second entry. So there's a second entry long there, right off the midline, right off the EMA. And this is played out, and this is an attempt to play out the low one that fails. You can see it ends up coming, when I say the low one, there's actually, you need at least 3 or 4 bars to really get a trend. So this is just more like strong support here to me than really a trend, although you can't argue that's not a trend, and that's a higher low that fails to come back. So you may take that trade. Then you get 2 legs back, and there's a second entry right there, but look where it's at. You could say, hey, there's some support there, but prices are probably trying to come back. Of course, you wouldn't have this trend line yet, but you got to figure there's something over here that prices are working towards. And so if you got trapped right there, that's why you got to be careful on these second entries. That one's very tempting, but you made a new low there, so wait on the higher low, which comes here, and you don't get a break above it, and then finally you get a break here. But that's why I always tell you to wait on higher lows. Technically, by this point, you really have a range across here. And you can see that. And this makes a new low. So generally when you get a new low, wait on the higher low, because this is what can happen. It can tick up and turn down on you. But I don't see any way to enter this. It just rockets off upwards. Hits the upper side, comes back down, and we actually get a break before we really get this confirmed. No entry there. Wait on the higher low, which comes here. I like that one. And there's really a failure here, but we're not back to the trend line. You can see we're just kind of working sideways. It does come back. I don't see any entry there though. So you get your break, 2 legs to a new high, and then you got a trend working down. I marked this one. I marked it green because you do have your 2 legs up, and then you get this little trap right here that fails. Look how bearish that is, long way away from the EMA. So you may take that one. If you don't take that one, you don't get a chance to enter this move. You see a lot of that lately. We get these nice moves, and you just don't really get a setup to enter them. It's unfortunate, but it's just the way it goes. Stuff has been really volatile, and it'll be running super strong one direction and just reverse on a dime and run super strong in the other direction. And that's what happened here. We're running down, you get a break and new low, but it played out perfect. You're running up, you get a break and new high, continue sideways, and then you get a failed breakout and you make another leg up. So this one looks like a triple test, really. You got a low, you test it once, you test it twice. This, you could almost argue this is still part of the same test though. But I still like that because it broke lower first. You're going to trap some people, and you got plenty of room back up here. By the counts, you could say that's a second entry right here, but that's not a leg. It just looks like one leg down. So you got to remember, we're not just looking at the counts, we're looking at the visual of it as well. And we're chopping along, and now you could say, hey, we got a triple test here. 1, 2, 3, and that's a pretty good bar. I marked it green just because by this point I wasn't sure what prices were really doing here. They were struggling to bounce. So, but you can see we're just going from high to low to high to low to high. So you would expect that we're probably going to go higher back to the highs here. So maybe you take that trade. I marked it green, but it's borderline. You could argue. I mean, this looks a little sideways, but technically that wasn't congestion until this bar, and you might have already been in the trade by then, and it would have worked. So, but I'm not crazy about that setup. You get a failed break lower, no chance to enter, and then notice you get a first entry and then a second entry. So when it breaks above this bar, and this is a repeat pattern, we had one earlier, it looked just like it. When it breaks above that bar, that's a failure. Your safety stop has to go one tick below this bar, and that takes you into 230. So there's quite a few trades here today. Not as good as maybe another day we've had recently, but it's getting a little easier. It's still a lot of flip-flopping here, but we had a really good downtrend early, and we really trended up here most of the day other than these quick sell-offs. But each quick sell-off led to another higher high. And so that's an uptrend, and you need to find the trend channel and the trend line and stick with it. So this one probably really starts right here and works like this. I think it fits a little better there, but I originally had it the other way, and it doesn't matter. It's close enough either way. You really get to the same place, other than these bounces. That might have given you a little more reason to stay with some of these bounces versus it being green there. I don't know, maybe. But anyway, that's how I saw it today. And we're heading towards 30 minutes here, so I'm not going to beat around the bush, and I'm ready to go home today anyway. So it's been a long day for me. I had to be at the doctor's office early this morning, earlier than I normally would be at the office. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up and call it a day and take the rest of the day and go home. It's getting late now anyway. So, but anyway, I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.